Captain John Miller stared at the glowing screen, his face lit by its blue light. The message was clear, but nobody wanted to believe it. "Play it again," he said to Laura Bennett. She nodded and tapped the controls. The strange symbols flashed across the screen once more. After weeks of work, they had finally translated the alien message. Now, John almost wished they hadn't. "A warning," Laura said quietly. From across the stars. It was 2147, and humanity had spread throughout the solar system. Moon bases, Mars colonies, and space stations orbited every planet. Earth remained the center of human power, where the Global Council made decisions for all. John's ship had discovered the signal 3 months ago near Neptune. At first, they thought it was just space noise, but the pattern was too regular, too intentional. The message had been aimed directly at Earth. Laura pushed her red hair behind her ears. The Arcturus Alliance sent this warning to every developing civilization they could find. They'd been fighting these Exarathi for over 200 years. Rick Carter, the team's communication specialist, pointed at the translated text. "The Exarathi find worlds with technology, conquer them, and take everything. Knowledge, machines, resources, people, everything." John crossed his arms. "And according to this, they're heading our way." The three of them sat in a small room deep inside Earth Defense Headquarters. Outside, San Francisco continued its normal day. People walking under the bright summer sun, unaware of the threat from beyond. "The council meeting is in 1 hour," Laura said. "We need to convince them." John nodded. He had served in Earth's defense forces for 15 years, rising quickly through the ranks. People trusted him, but this was different. This was telling humanity that monsters were coming from space. "They'll say we're crazy," Rick muttered, "or that we translated it wrong." "Then we'll show them our work," Laura replied. She gathered her notes and straightened her uniform. "The math is solid. The translation is correct." 1 hour later, John stood before the Global Council. 50 men and women from around Earth sat in a half circle, looking down at him from raised seats. Senator William Clark, the council leader, watched with cold eyes. "Captain Miller," Clark said, "you claim to have received a message from aliens." John stood tall. "Yes, sir. A warning about a hostile species called the Exarathi. They conquer worlds and strip them of all useful technology and knowledge. The message claims they will reach our solar system within 5 years." Murmurs filled the room. Some counselors laughed quietly. Others looked worried. "And who sent this warning?" asked a woman from the African Union. "The Arcturus Alliance," Laura answered, stepping forward. "A group of civilizations that have been fighting the Exarathi for centuries." Senator Clark leaned forward. "And do we have any proof beyond this message? Any images of these Exarathi? Any evidence they even exist?" "No, sir," John admitted. "But the message could be a hoax," Clark interrupted, "or a trick to make us waste resources preparing for a fake invasion." John tried again. "Sir, the odds of this being a hoax are not 0, Clark finished. "Captain, do you know how much panic this would cause if made public? How many resources we would need to spend to prepare? We have real problems on Earth, and throughout our colonies. We cannot afford to chase space ghosts." For 2 hours, John and Laura tried to convince the council. They showed the original signal, their translation work, the mathematical proofs that the message came from 47 light-years away. In the end, it wasn't enough. "The council has voted," Senator Clark announced. "By a margin of 31 to 19, we have decided not to act on this supposed warning. The information will be classified. Captain Miller, Dr. Bennett, and Mr. Carter will be reassigned to separate posts. This matter is closed." As guards escorted them out, Laura whispered to John, "What do we do now?" John looked back at the council chamber doors closing behind them. "We prepare anyway. Because if that message is right, we have 5 years before everything changes." He didn't know then how right he was, or that they actually had much less time than that. 5 years passed. The world forgot about the warning, but Laura Bennett did not. She stood alone in the cold observation room of Europa Station, watching the stars through the large window. After the council meeting, they had sent her far from Earth. Deep space research, they called it. Really, it was exile. Laura checked her screens again. For 3 days, she had tracked strange energy readings at the edge of the solar system. Something was out there, moving closer. She picked up her communicator. "Captain Miller, it's Laura. I need to talk to you." Miles away, John Miller sat in the small cabin of his patrol ship near Mars. Once, he had commanded a powerful vessel with a crew of hundreds. Now he had this tiny ship and a crew of 5. His punishment for trying to warn Earth. John's communicator beeped. When he saw Laura's name, his heart beat faster. They hadn't spoken in months. "Laura," he answered. "What's wrong?" "I'm tracking something near Pluto," she said, her voice shaking. "Multiple objects, moving fast. They're giving off energy signatures I've never seen before." John sat up straight. "Could it be the Exorethi?" Laura finished. "Yes, I think they're here." Before John could reply, alarms blared across his ship. His pilot, Sam Green, shouted from the bridge. "Captain, look at this." John rushed to the main screen. Dozens of objects had appeared near Mars. They were huge, at least twice the size of Earth's largest ships. They looked like giant sea creatures made of metal and light, with long tentacles and glowing centers. "They just appeared," Sam said. "No warning." On the communication channel, Laura's voice was panicked. "John, they're everywhere. The whole system is full of them." Earth's defense forces scrambled to respond. Patrol ships moved to intercept the strange vessels. Military bases across the solar system went on high alert. Then the first messages came from Earth. The alien ships had appeared there too, hovering over major cities. The defense satellites were offline. Something had disabled them. "Try to contact Earth Defense Command," John ordered Sam. "No response, sir," Sam replied. "All channels are jammed or silent." John made a quick decision. "Set course for Europa Station. We need to get Laura." As their ship moved away from Mars, they saw the first attacks begin. The alien vessels fired strange energy beams that didn't destroy Earth's ships. They simply stopped them, freezing them in space. "Activating stealth systems," Sam said. John's ship had one advantage: an experimental stealth drive that might hide them from the aliens. On Europa, Laura watched in horror as alien ships appeared near the station. The station's few defenses fired, but their weapons seemed to pass through the alien vessels without effect. Station alarms blared. People ran through corridors, trying to reach escape pods. Laura gathered her research data and ran too. A loud crash shook the station. Metal walls bent inward as something forced its way inside. Laura heard screaming from the main hall. She hid in a storage room and watched through a small window as the first Exorethi entered the station. It was tall, at least 8 feet, with skin like clear glass. Inside its body, machine parts moved and shifted. It had no face, just a smooth surface with lights beneath. More Exorethi followed. They touched the station's computers, and data flowed visibly into their bodies. They ignored the humans at first, focusing on the technology. Laura's communicator vibrated silently. A message from John. Near station. Emergency Dock 7. 5 minutes. She clutched her data pad and moved carefully through maintenance tunnels toward the dock. Through windows and gaps, she saw more Exorethi boarding the station. They were beginning to gather humans now, herding them into groups. When Laura reached Dock 7, John was waiting. His ship hovered outside, stealth systems making it flicker like a ghost. "Hurry," he said, pulling her inside. As they pulled away from the dying station, they watched the solar system fall. On every screen, reports came in of Earth's defenses failing, colonies being invaded, ships being captured. First contact had become conquest in less than a day. 6 months after the invasion, humanity lived in chains. The Exarethi controlled Earth and most colonies. People worked in huge factories, combining human technology with Exarethi biotech. Deep in the abandoned mines of Mars, John Miller sat with what remained of the resistance. 27 people had survived with him. Laura Bennett worked at a small computer station. Paul Watson, an engineer they had rescued from a Mars colony, fixed equipment in the corner. Kate Summers, a former Marine, cleaned her weapon. "Any news from Earth?" John asked. Laura shook her head. "Communications are still blocked. But we intercepted some Exarethi signals. They're building something big in orbit around Earth." John looked at their small group. Once, he had commanded a ship with hundreds of crew. Now he led a handful of survivors in a dark cave. But they were still free, unlike billions of others. "Play that Exarethi transmission again," Paul called from his workbench. "I noticed something weird about it." Laura played the recording. Strange sounds filled the room. Clicks, hums, and electronic noises that the Exarethi used to communicate with their machines. Paul held up a small device. "I've been studying these transmissions. Watch what happens when I play human music alongside it." He pressed a button. Old rock music played next to the Exarethi sounds. On Laura's screen, that Exarethi signal pattern became erratic. The Exarethi communication breaks down when exposed to certain human patterns, Paul explained. Especially music with unusual rhythms. They're like machines. They understand patterns, but only predictable ones. Kate moved closer. "Are you saying we can jam their communications with music?" "Maybe more than that," Paul said. "Their whole system might be vulnerable to unpredictable human creativity. They're logical, systematic. We're not." Laura looked excited for the first time in months. That could be a weapon. John stood up. "We need to test this, and we need more people." They knew other resistance groups existed throughout the solar system, but contact was dangerous. The Exarethi monitored all standard communications. "If we can disrupt their systems with this method, we could coordinate with other groups," John said. Over the next week, Paul and Laura built devices that could send signals hidden within random patterns of music and noise, patterns that made sense to humans but confused Exarethi systems. They made contact with 3 other resistance cells, one on Ganymede, one in the asteroid belt, and a small group hiding in the mountains of Earth. "There's something else," Laura told John one night. "We've heard rumors about a Exarethi processing center on Europa. They're studying captured humans there, trying to understand how we think." "Why?" asked Kate. "Because we confuse them," Paul said. "Humans make decisions based on emotions, instinct, creativity, things that Exarethi can't process well." John looked at their small team. "If we could get into that facility, we might learn more about their weaknesses." "It would be suicide," Kate said. "Maybe not," John replied. "Not if we use what Paul discovered. Their systems have trouble tracking unpredictable patterns. If we move unpredictably." 2 days later, John's team approached Europa in their modified ship. Paul had reprogrammed their engines to change speed and direction in patterns based on jazz music rhythms. The Exarethi sensors seemed confused by their approach. They landed near the facility during a solar storm that provided additional cover. Kate led the infiltration team while Laura hacked into the facility's systems using Paul's disruption method. Inside, they found humans in glass cells, scientists, artists, musicians, people who thought differently. The Exarethi were studying them. "They're trying to understand human creativity," Laura whispered. In one cell, they found Dr. Frank Nguyen, a physicist who had been working on experimental faster-than-light drives before the invasion. "We need to free as many as we can," John ordered. As alarms finally began to sound, they released the prisoners and fought their way back to the ship. 3 team members were lost, but they escaped with 17 freed humans. Back in the Mars hideout, Dr. Nguyen examined their ship. With the right modifications, he said, and using what I know about Sci-Fi technology, I believe we could make your ship capable of faster-than-light travel. John looked at him in surprise. Why would we need that? To find the Arcturus Alliance, Dr. Nguyen said. The ones who warned us. They're still out there, fighting. And now we know something about the HFY that might help them win. For 6 weeks, Dr. Nguyen and Paul worked to transform John's ship. They added parts taken from Sci-Fi technology found during raids. The ship's hull now had strange patterns of light running through it, like glowing veins. What should we call her? Kate asked, looking at the modified ship. Defiance, John said. The name felt right. It was what humans had left. Defiance against the machines that had taken their world. Laura studied the star charts they had pieced together from Sci-Fi data. If the Arcturus Alliance still exists, they'll be at least 30 light-years from here. Can this ship really go that far? Kate asked Dr. Nguyen. The scientist nodded. The drive combines human FTL theories with Sci-Fi technology. It works differently than their ships. They travel using fixed points and mathematical precision. Our drive uses less exact methods. Meaning? John asked. Paul smiled. It uses human intuition. The pilot feels the right path rather than calculating it. The Sci-Fi can't understand that approach, which is why they'll have trouble following us. They loaded the ship with supplies and data about the Sci-Fi. 12 people would make the journey. John, Laura, Paul, Kate, Dr. Nguyen, and 7 others with skills they might need. If we find the Alliance, John told the Resistance members staying behind, we'll bring help. If not, at least the Sci-Fi won't have captured all of humanity. The night before launch, Laura found John staring at Earth through a telescope. Do you think we're doing the right thing? She asked. Leaving. We're not leaving, John said quietly. We're looking for allies. The Resistance here will continue fighting, but they need help. We all do. The next morning, they boarded Defiance. Paul and Dr. Nguyen made final adjustments to the drive. Remember, Dr. Nguyen told Sam, who would pilot the ship, don't think like a computer. Feel the path. The drive responds to human intuition. They launched during a dust storm that hid them from Sci-Fi sensors. As they reached space, alarms sounded. 3 Sci-Fi hunter ships had detected them and were in pursuit, engaging FTL. Sam called. The stars stretched and blurred around them. The ship shuddered as it pushed beyond light speed. Behind them, the Sci-Fi ships followed, their drives more powerful and precise. They're gaining, Kate warned. Sam, John said, stop trying to outrun them. That's what they expect. Do something unpredictable. Sam nodded and closed his eyes. Instead of flying straight, he began to make random jumps. Left, right, up, down, following no logical pattern. He hummed an old song as he worked, letting the music guide his hands. The Sci-Fi ships faltered, their precise calculations confused by the human ship's erratic movements. After 3 more jumps, they lost their pursuers. For 4 weeks, they traveled through space, making jumps that no computer would choose. They followed hunches, instincts, and sometimes just Sam's gut feelings about which way felt right. Finally, they detected a signal, a pattern similar to the warning Earth had received years ago. That's them, Laura said excitedly. The Arcturus Alliance. They followed the signal to a small star system with several planets. As they approached, 20 ships surrounded them, weapons ready. A voice came through their communication system, speaking in a strange language that their computers slowly translated. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Alliance space. Identify yourselves or be destroyed. We are humans from Earth, John replied. We received your warning about the Sci-Fi. We've come seeking help. A long silence followed. Earth. The voice finally responded. Earth was lost. The Sci-Fi claimed it months ago. Not all of it, John said, and not all of us. We've learned things about the Exorethi. We've found weaknesses. Another voice cut in, harsher and deeper. Why should we help you? You ignored our warning. You let the Exorethi gain your technology, your knowledge. You made them stronger. On the main screen, an image appeared. A tall, blue-skinned creature with 4 eyes looked at them. Alliance Commander Zexril studied the humans with obvious distrust. You were warned, the commander said coldly. You didn't listen. Why should we risk more Alliance lives for your mistake? John stood tall before the Alliance Council. 7 aliens from different species sat in a half-circle, looking down at him. Commander Zexril's blue skin seemed to glow under the strange lights. Humans ignored our warning, Zexril said. Many worlds fall to the Exorethi, but yours gave them the most. Your weapons, your ships, your computers. Now they use these against us. Our leaders made a mistake, John admitted, but the people of Earth are paying for it. And we've discovered something about the Exorethi that might help us all. Laura stepped forward with Paul. They showed the data they had collected. The Exorethi cannot process true creativity or emotion, Laura explained. Their minds work like advanced computers. They'd follow patterns and logic, but human minds are different. Paul activated a small device. A Exorethi communication signal played, then became distorted when mixed with human music. Unpredictable patterns confused them, Paul said. Art, music, poetry, things that come from emotion rather than logic. Dr. Nguyen added, even our ship's drive uses human intuition rather than mathematical calculation. That's how we escape their hunters. The council members looked at each other. A small green alien with large eyes spoke. Interesting, but how does this help us win a war? The Exorethi have taken 12 systems in the past cycle. They grow stronger each day. Because we can use human unpredictability as a weapon, Kate said. She showed battle simulations. Exorethi ships expect logical moves in combat. They can't handle random emotional decisions. For 3 days, the humans shared everything they had learned. Slowly, the council began to see potential in what they offered. There is possibility here, Zexril finally admitted. But words are not enough. Show us that humans can truly help our cause. The Alliance took the humans to a training base on a small moon. There, Kate began teaching Alliance soldiers human combat tactics. Instead of precise formations, she showed them how to use surprise and improvisation. Paul worked with Alliance engineers, creating weapons that used chaotic patterns based on human art and music to disrupt Exorethi systems. Laura and Dr. Nguyen joined Alliance scientists to develop a theory about the Exorethi consciousness. We believe the Exorethi mind is a vast networked artificial intelligence, Laura explained. They think as one connected system. That's their strength, but also their weakness. John was given access to Alliance intelligence. What he learned chilled him. The Exorethi weren't just occupying Earth. They were transforming it into a massive processing hub for their next expansion wave. They're going to use Earth as a base to attack the remaining Alliance worlds, he told Zexril. They'll come with ships built using human technology, but improved by Exorethi methods. Then, one night, a signal reached the Alliance base. It came through channels that Paul had designed specifically to hide from Exorethi detection. This is Senator Clark of Earth's Resistance, said a tired voice. If anyone can hear this, we found something. The main Exorethi processing hub in New York has a weakness. Their central consciousness node is vulnerable during data transfer cycles, but we need help to exploit it. The Alliance Council debated for hours. Many wanted to abandon the human worlds as lost, to build defenses around their remaining territory. The Exorethi are too strong now, argued one council member. If we commit ships to Earth, we risk losing everything. If we do nothing, John countered, they'll use Earth's resources to build an even larger fleet. You won't be able to stop them then. Finally, Zexril made the decision. The human element of unpredictability is the one advantage we never had before. Perhaps it is what the Alliance has needed all along. The commander turned to John. We will help you. Not because we owe humans anything, but because your strange minds might be our last hope. John looked at his team. Laura, Paul, Kate, and the others who had journeyed across the stars with him. Then let's take back our home, he said, and show the Xerathi what humans can really do. The small fleet of Alliance ships moved through space silently. 5 vessels, including the Defiance, carried a mixed crew of aliens and humans. They approached Earth using the strange flight patterns that Sam had perfected, jumping in ways no computer would predict. John looked at Earth through the view screen. Blue oceans were now gray. Once green continents showed black scars where Xerathi facilities had been built. Massive ships moved in orbit, harvesting resources. It doesn't even look like home anymore, Laura whispered beside him. Sexril joined them on the bridge. The Xerathi transform worlds to suit their needs. They see beauty in efficiency, not in nature. Their plan was dangerous but simple. Senator Clark's resistance would create a distraction in Europe. While the Xerathi forces responded, John's team would infiltrate the main processing hub in New York to upload a virus Laura and Paul had created. The virus contained pure emotional chaos. Music, poetry, art, and human feelings mixed into code that would confuse the Xerathi network. We enter atmosphere in 20 minutes, Sam announced from the pilot's seat. Stealth systems at maximum. Kate checked her weapons. The resistance will be waiting at these coordinates. She pointed to a spot outside the ruins of Washington. As they descended through clouds, they saw what Earth had become. Cities were now massive factories. Highways had been rebuilt as transport tubes for Xerathi vessels. Humans worked in groups, monitored by tall Xerathi overseers. They landed in a forest that had somehow survived. Senator Clark was waiting with 50 resistance fighters. The old man looked much thinner than John remembered, but his eyes were still sharp. Captain Miller, Clark said, shaking John's hand. When we sent that message, I never truly believed help would come. We brought more than help, John replied. We brought a way to fight back. Clark led them to an underground bunker. Maps showed Xerathi patrol routes and facility locations. The New York processing hub was heavily guarded, a massive tower rising from the ruins of Manhattan. The Xerathi have changed, Clark explained. They've been studying us, learning to understand human thought patterns. They're adapting. Laura frowned. That complicates our plan, if they're beginning to understand human unpredictability. They understand it, Clark said, but they still can't process extreme emotional responses. That remains their weakness. For 3 days, they prepared. Alliance engineers built special devices designed to confuse Xerathi sensors. Kate trained the resistance fighters in new tactics. Laura and Paul refined their virus. Then the day came. The European resistance launched their attack, destroying power stations and communication relays. Xerathi forces moved to respond. John's team approached New York in small, fast vehicles. The processing hub rose before them like a giant black tree, its branches reaching into the sky. Humans moved in and out in orderly lines, their faces empty. Some had Xerathi technology attached to their bodies, implants that connected them to the hive mind. Those are integration subjects, Clark whispered, humans being prepared to join the Xerathi consciousness. They used the chaos of the distant attack to slip inside through maintenance tunnels. Alliance technology helped mask their presence, while human guards sympathetic to the resistance created gaps in security. But as they neared the central core, alarms sounded. Xerathi guards converged on their position. Along with human Xerathi hybrids, their bodies partly mechanical, their eyes glowing with inner light. They know we're here, Kate said, firing at approaching figures. The integration subjects must have sensed us. The team fought their way toward the core, but more hybrids appeared, blocking their path. They were trapped in a large chamber, surrounded on all sides. Kate looked at the small device in her hand, a trigger for explosives they had planted as backup. "Get to the core," she told John. "I'll clear the path." Before anyone could stop her, Kate ran toward the largest group of hybrids. She screamed, a sound of pure human rage and grief that made the hybrids hesitate, their systems struggling to process such raw emotion. Kate hit the trigger. The explosion ripped through the chamber, creating a path forward. "Go!" she shouted as the ceiling began to collapse. John, Laura, and Paul ran for the core as Kate vanished in flame and smoke behind them. John, Laura, and Paul reached the core of the Exorethi processing hub. The chamber glowed with blue light. In the center stood a pillar of shifting metal and energy that pulsed like a heart. "The central node," Laura whispered. "It connects all Exorethi minds on Earth." Paul connected their device to an access point. The virus they had created would spread through the Exorethi network, carrying human emotions and unpredictable patterns that would confuse the hive mind. "Uploading now," Paul said. Suddenly, the walls around them shifted. A large Exorethi appeared, different from the others they had seen. It was almost twice as tall, its transparent skin showing more complex machinery inside. "Humans," it said in a voice that sounded like many voices speaking together. "You believe your chaotic minds can defeat us." "They can," John replied, raising his weapon. "You can't understand us. That's your weakness. We have studied you. We have integrated many humans into our consciousness. We are adapting." Laura checked the upload progress, only halfway complete. They needed more time. "You still don't get it," John said, stepping forward. "Humans don't make sense. We do things that have no logic. We feel things that have no purpose." "Inefficient," the Exorethi said. "But powerful," Laura added. She began reciting poetry, words about love and loss that made no logical sense but carried deep emotion. The Exorethi tilted its head, struggling to process. Paul continued the upload while adding human music through the system speakers, chaotic jazz with no pattern the Exorethi could understand. The large Exorethi moved toward them, but its movements became jerky and uncertain. "You cannot defeat logic with chaos. Watch us," John said. The upload completed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blue light of the core began to flicker and pulse in irregular patterns. The Exorethi commander froze, its internal machinery spinning rapidly as it tried to process the flood of human emotion and creativity now flowing through its network. Throughout the building, Exorethi stopped moving. Some clutched their heads. Others fell to the ground. The human Exorethi hybrids seemed most affected, screaming as human emotions they had forgotten rushed back through their connected minds. "It's working," Laura said. "The emotional chaos is overloading their systems." Across Earth, the effect spread. Exorethi ships in orbit lost control, crashing into each other. Processing centers shut down as the hive mind fractured under the weight of human unpredictability. John activated his communicator. "Alliance fleet. Now." In space, Zexril gave the order. Alliance ships appeared from hiding, attacking the disabled Exorethi vessels. At the same time, resistance fighters across Earth moved against confused Exorethi troops. 3 days of fighting followed. The Exorethi tried to regain control, but their connection was broken. Without their hive mind, they were weaker, vulnerable to the unpredictable attacks of humans and the Alliance. 1 week later, John stood with Laura, Paul, and Zexril on a hill overlooking what was once New York. The Exorethi ships were leaving Earth, retreating from the solar system. "They're running," Paul said in disbelief. "Not just from Earth," Zexril added. "Reports from across the galaxy say Exorethi forces are withdrawing from many worlds." The virus spread through their entire network. 6 months passed. Earth began to heal. Alliance ships helped remove Exorethi technology. Humans who had been partially integrated retreated, their humanity slowly restored. In the rebuilt United Nations building, John and Sexril stood before the new Global Council. Senator Clark, now Council President, spoke to the gathered representatives. Today, we formally join the Arcturus Alliance. We have learned a harsh lesson about ignoring warnings. But we have also discovered our greatest strength, the very human qualities of creativity, emotion, and unpredictability. Later, John walked with Laura along a beach. The water was blue again, slowly recovering from Sarathi pollution. "What happens now?" Laura asked. "We rebuild," John said, "and we make sure no one forgets." In space, new ships carried a symbol on their hulls, a human handprint over a field of stars. Below it, words that were now famous throughout the galaxy. Humanity's final warning was ignored. Now fear rules the stars. But it is the aggressors who should be afraid. The universe had learned a vital lesson. Logic and precision had their place, but never underestimate the power of the human spirit, chaotic, emotional, and ultimately unstoppable.